clock signal. They tell the circuitry how fast the beam is moving and when it reaches certain points. Every time the circuitry detects a pulse from the ultraviolet photosensor, it knows the beam just crossed into an ultraviolet phosphor and is about to go into a red one, so it can start outputting the red component of the color signal. Then as the beam passes into the green phosphor, it produces a pulse in the green photosensor. And I believe this basically causes the circuitry to resonate at the frequency of the beam passing through the phosphors. With the circuitry knowing when the beam is going into a red phosphor and knowing how long it takes for it to get to a green phosphor, it's able to pretty much know how quickly to cycle through the colors as the beam goes across the screen in order to land every color where it belongs. And that's pretty much it. It's not actually a very complicated system. It kind of makes you wonder why they never thought to do it before. When you press the DeGauss button on the TV, it corrects distorted, puts this big ugly bruise on here, and it'll just stay there indefinitely, at least until we hit the DeGauss button. Now the reason this happens is because in the black and white television, when you put the magnet up there, the electrons start bending around the magnetic field, but as soon as you pull it away, they go back to normal. The larger scale where you can maybe see it, I'll make sure I put up a video. I have a eBay save search for it and put it right up near the face, and you can see that it bends the heck out of the picture. It does distort the colors, but then when I pull it away, everything just goes back to normal. The colors don't stay distorted. Now the reason for that is that there's no shadow mask and there's no aperture grill. There's nothing to retain the magnetic flux. So as soon as I pull the magnet away, the colors all steer right back to where they belonged, and there's no persistent magnetic field to continue distorting them. I know it's less punchy than if I could put this straight up against the screen. It's just really hard to get in there without damaging it. The other thing that's kind of hard to make out on the cell phone video, it shows up a lot better to the human eye, is that although the colors do distort, they're not actually changing hue like they are on this one. The greens aren't necessarily shifting into reds and so on. It's sort of an optical illusion. When you look at it with your eye, they actually stay the same. They just start to lose saturation as the magnet gets closer. That was actually a selling point of these CRTs, and the only application they were apparently used for, although I haven't found much information on this, which was ostensibly military.
Computers. For those who are not already familiar with this, I created Planet X Tube for the Commodore 64 last year, and then after the success of that, I promised to port it to MS-DOS machines. However, this new game has taken on a life of its own. I also launched a Kickstarter a few months ago, and hoping to get around 500 pre-orders or $30,000 worth of pre-sales, and it ended up with 2,548 backers totaling over $113,000. So in this video, I want to show you not only some of the progress that's been made since the Kickstarter video, but I also want to try to answer some of the frequently asked questions. And one of the most common questions I get is people wanting to know what language I'm coding it in, and what tools I'm using. So to answer the first big question, even though I've mentioned it before, I'm coding directly in 8088 assembly language. So this is what the source code looks like. And I get a lot of people asking why I'm not coding it in BASIC or C or some high-level language. And the bottom line is I need the speed and efficiency to make this work on low-end MS-DOS machines. And as far as tools go, I'm really only using 3 tools. One is Notepad, which I write the source code in, and then I use a compiler called A86 to compile the code into machine language. So that's my second tool. And then the third tool is DOSBox, which I use for most of the testing. Of course, I've had to write some of my own tools, which I'll talk about later. This is just a test map, but it shows off the Winter Graphics tile set. And what's neat about this is that each map can load a custom tile set. And it's more than just different tiles, as the tiles can also have different attributes. So, for example, I have snowmen in this map, which has no analogous tile in the other maps. So this gives a lot of flexibility to creating new landscapes. And there's not much here in this winter map. As I said, it's just mostly a test map. Also, there's a bit of snow on top of some of the buildings here as well. And moving along, this is another map called Desert. And there are a lot of neat features in this tile set as well, but again, this is just a test map, so there isn't a whole lot to see here. In fact, there's the abrupt end of my stream, and here's some minerals crammed up there. And here's what the winter mode looks like in CGA 4-color mode. And I noticed there are a few black tiles, because the tile set is not 100% completed for this mode. And speaking of new graphics, this is probably what everybody's been waiting to see. Last month I created yet another tile draw program, and this one was designed for VGA graphics, and just in time for the finished 256 color artwork that Renault was working on. It took me about 4 or 5 days to get the tile editor completely converted to work with 256 color VGA graphics, but the great thing is many of the screen drawing routines I had to design here were easily transferable to the game itself. Now, before I show you the game itself, I wanted to mention something else. These are all the different video modes I had planned to support, and the first 4 modes are all handled by the CGA version of the game, even the Tandy mode. And that's because all of these modes use a 16K video RAM configuration. So,
we are expecting the news from Balmoral that she's having treatment, or that indeed they are unable to help Her Majesty anymore. A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Palace has just issued this statement. It says the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Within the past few minutes, Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. To recap on the statement, the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King, as Charles, and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow.